The Great Hall of the Coalition floated in orbit above a dying world called Thren Vasa. It was a huge station, built from black metal and soft blue light, and it was the place where the free species of the galaxy came to talk, when talking was the only thing left to try. Today the hall was full, and the air was heavy with fear. At the center of the round chamber stood Speaker Ulvin, a tall being from the Korvath people, with gray skin and long fingers that never stopped moving when she was worried. Right now they were shaking. "The Skarn Dominion has taken the Varen Belt," she said. Her voice was flat, but everyone could hear the tremor under it. 3 systems in 6 days. The Varen fleet is gone. Not defeated. Gone. Every ship, every station, every soul. A murmur ran through the hall. Delegates from a dozen worlds sat in tiered seats around the chamber, and all of them looked the same right now. Tired, afraid, and out of good ideas. "We have asked every free world for ships," Ulvin went on. "The Doran Concord has sent 40 warships. The Ith Collective has sent their entire home fleet, though it is small. The free clans of Border Reach have sent every armed vessel they own, even the old ones." She paused. "We have also asked the humans." At that word, the whole room went quiet, in a different way. Not bored quiet, careful quiet. Humanity was new to the wider galaxy. They had only met the Coalition species 12 years ago, when a human science ship had drifted into Coalition space by accident, badly damaged, with a crew of 11 who were half-starved and completely calm about it. Since then, humans had kept mostly to themselves, trading a little, talking a little, fighting no one. Nobody really understood them yet. Some species thought humans were young and harmless, still learning how the galaxy worked. Others were not so sure. "And what did the humans send?" asked a delegate from the Doran Concord, a broad, four-armed being named Kesu. He asked the question like a man expecting a joke. Speaker Ulvin tapped a control, and a screen lit up above the center of the room. It showed a single ship. It was not large compared to the biggest Coalition battleships, maybe half their size, and it was a dull gray color with no lights, no markings, nothing that a scanner would call impressive. It looked plain. It looked almost boring. "They sent one ship," Ulvin said. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then the whole chamber erupted at once. "One ship?" Kesu stood up so fast his chair spun. "The Skarn are burning entire systems, and the humans send us one ship?" "This is an insult," said another delegate, a thin, quick-moving being from the Ith Collective. "A single vessel. Are they even taking this war seriously?" Ulvin raised a hand, and slowly, the noise died down. "I understand the anger," she said. "I felt it too, when the message came. But I want you to look at the ship's designation before you decide what it means." She tapped the screen again. Under the image of the gray ship, letters appeared. They were human letters, but the Coalition translation systems had already turned them into universal script. "The last word. That name means nothing to me," Kesu said. "It should," said a quiet voice from the back of the room. Every head turned. The being who had spoken was old, small, and wrapped in a heavy cloak the color of rust. He was Vos Aim, a trader and scout from the Free Clans, one of the few beings in the room who had actually spent real time near human space. He had not said a word until now. "Speak then," Ulvin said gently. "Tell them what you told me." Vos Aim stood, slowly, leaning on a walking stick made of some dark wood. 3 years ago, he said, I was running cargo along the edge of the Kest Reaches, near the human border. A Skarn raiding group. 5 ships, small but nasty, the kind that burns a colony and leaves before help arrives, went into human territory. They hit a mining outpost called Calder's Rest. 11,000 people lived there. Humans, mostly. A few Ith families too. The room was silent now, listening. I was 2 systems away when it happened, hiding in an asteroid field because I did not want to be near Skarn raiders, Vos Aim continued. I heard the distress call go out. And I heard, 20 minutes later, a single human ship answer it. Not a fleet, 1 ship. It gave its coordinates, said it was inbound, and told the raiders, this part I remember exactly, because the Skarn captain repeated it later, before he died. It told them, you have 4 minutes to leave this system. After that, I will not ask again. And? Kesu asked, quieter now. And the Skarn raiders did not leave, Voss Aim said. They thought one ship was nothing. They had 5 warships and a mining colony to loot. Why would they run from one gray ship with no name on its hull? He paused, and his old eyes moved slowly around the room. I came out of hiding 2 days later, when I was sure it was safe, and I flew past that system on my way home. I wanted to see the wreckage of the colony, because I expected to find nothing left. Instead, I found 5 dead Skarn warships, torn apart, scattered across half the system, and I found Calder's Rest, completely untouched. Not one building damaged. Not one person hurt. The humans who lived there told me the whole fight had lasted less than 9 minutes. Nobody spoke for a long moment. That is one story, Kesu said, but there was much less certainty in his voice now. It is not the only one, Voss Aim said. I have heard others, from other traders, along other borders. Always the same ship, always gray, always unmarked, always alone. The Skarn who survive meeting it do not like to talk about it. The ones who do talk call it different names in their own tongue, but none of them will say its human name out loud. They believe saying it brings bad luck. He shrugged his thin shoulders. I do not know if that is true. I only know that in every story I have heard, that one ship did what whole fleets could not do, and it did it without losing a single human life. Speaker Ulvin let the silence sit for a moment before she spoke again. The humans did not send us one ship because they think this war is small, she said. I believe they sent us one ship because, to them, one ship is enough. That is either the bravest thing I have ever heard, Kesu said slowly, or the most foolish. Perhaps, Ulvin said, it is both. We will find out soon. The ship is already inbound. It will reach the Varen Belt in 9 days, ahead of the main Skarn advance fleet, which is moving toward the border world of Ashen Prime. If it does not slow the Skarn down, Ashen Prime falls, and 40 million people die with it. The screen changed, showing a star map. A small blinking light, the human ship, moved steadily through Coalition space, cutting a straight line toward the warfront, while a much larger red mass of icons, the Skarn fleet, crawled toward the same border world from the other direction. We should send everything we have to support it, Kesu said. Whatever this ship is, it cannot face the whole Skarn advance fleet alone. That is over 300 warships. The humans specifically requested that no coalition ships engage alongside it, Ulvin said. That brought the room back to noisy confusion. Why? Someone shouted. That makes no sense. Even if this ship is powerful, one ship against 300 is not bravery, it is. It is what they asked, Ulvin said, cutting through the noise. And it is what we are going to give them, because right now, it is the only offer of real help we have received that does not come with 3 months of preparation time we do not have. Ashen Prime does not have 3 months. It has 9 days. Kesu sat back down slowly, his forearms folded. And if this ship fails? Then we lose Ashen Prime, Ulvin said, the same as if it had never come at all. We lose nothing by letting it try first. She looked around the chamber, at all the tired, frightened faces. But I do not think it will fail. I do not know why I believe that. Perhaps it is only because I want to believe it. But I have read every report Voss Aim and others like him have brought us, and in every single one, this ship did something that should not have been possible, and it did it calmly, as if it were nothing unusual at all. Far across Coalition space, aboard the ship called The Last Word, the reality was quieter than anyone in the Great Hall could have imagined. The bridge held only a handful of people. It did not need more. Captain Mara Voss sat in the center chair, a woman in her 40s with short gray-streaked hair, and the kind of stillness that came from a lot of practice staying calm when things went wrong. Around her, 4 crew members monitored systems that mostly ran themselves, because The Last Word had been built to need very few hands. Report, Mara said, not looking up from the star chart in front of her. 9 days to Ashen Prime at current speed, said Lieutenant Iko Tanaka, the ship's navigator, a young man who had been with the ship for 3 years and still sometimes looked amazed that he was on it at all. Skarn Advance Fleet is holding formation. 311 warships, by our latest count. No sign they know we're coming yet. They'll know soon, Mara said. The Coalition will have told them, one way or another. Word travels. Does that worry you, Captain? Iko asked. Mara finally looked up, and there was the smallest trace of a smile on her face. Not a happy smile, but a tired, knowing one. "No," she said, "it should worry them." On the far side of the bridge, a soft blue light pulsed gently from a small round unit set into the wall. This was Arbiter, the ship's intelligence, which had been with the ship since before it had a crew, since before it even had a name. Arbiter's voice, when it spoke, was calm and even, almost gentle. "Captain," Arbiter said, "the Coalition speaker has sent a private message, separate from the official channel. She wishes to know if we require any support fleet at the rendezvous point." "Send the same answer we always send," Mara said. "No support fleet. Just clear the civilians out of the path if you can, and stay out of our way." "Message sent," Arbiter said. A pause. "May I ask, Captain, why we continue to refuse support? A larger combined force would reduce risk to this crew." Mara leaned back in her chair and looked at the star chart again, at the small blinking dot that was her ship, and the huge red mass that was the enemy fleet. Still 9 days and a whole war away. "Because the last 3 wars we fought like that," she said quietly. "We lost good people trying to protect fleets that weren't ready for what they were facing. This way, if something goes wrong, it's on us. Nobody else pays for our mistakes." She looked around at her small crew. 4 people, 1 ship, 1 job. Besides, they don't send an army because they're scared of an army. Armies you can count. Armies have a size, a strength, a weakness somewhere if you look hard enough. 1 ship that keeps winning, and nobody can explain how. That's different. That gets into people's heads. And once it's in their heads, half the fight is already over before we fire a single shot. "A psychological strategy," Arbiter said. "Call it what you want," Mara said, standing and walking slowly toward the front viewport, where the stars stretched out ahead of them, calm and endless. "I call it doing the job right. 9 days, everyone. Get some rest while you can. After that, it's not going to be quiet for a while." Behind her, the ship hummed softly, patient and steady, carrying its small crew and its heavy reputation deeper into the dark, toward a war that 300 enemy ships thought they were ready for, and toward a fear that had followed this ship's unspoken name across a dozen systems, long before it ever arrived. 3 days into the journey, Mara Voss could not sleep, so she went down to the small room the crew called the archive, though it was really just a quiet corner of the ship with old records stored in it. She liked to sit there sometimes when her mind was too full. Tonight it was very full. The last word had not always been the last word. Long before Mara had ever set foot on its deck, the ship had been something else entirely. A project, a promise, and for a while, a secret that only a handful of people on Earth had known about. It went back nearly 30 years, to a time most people on Earth still remembered clearly, though they did not like to talk about it much. Earth had fought its own war once, a long time before the Coalition ever knew humans existed. It had not been a war against aliens. It had been a war against itself, the last and worst of many, fought over dying rivers and disappearing coastlines, and food that had stopped growing in places it used to grow. Whole cities had gone quiet during that war. Whole countries had stopped being countries. By the time it ended, humanity had lost almost 1/5 of its entire population, and the ones who survived had made a promise to each other that they intended to keep for the rest of history. Never again would they let a war grow that big before someone stopped it. Out of that promise came a strange kind of military thinking, one that Mara had studied for years before she ever earned the right to sit in the captain's chair of a ship like this one. Instead of building enormous fleets and massive armies the way old Earth governments once had, the united human government that rose after the war chose a different path. They built fewer things, but they built them extremely well, and they built them to be commanded by people who were trained not just to fight, but to think, to negotiate, and to know exactly when fighting was the wrong choice. The last word had been the last of a very small class of ships, only 6 of them ever built, each one taking almost a decade to finish. They were not the biggest ships humanity could build. They were something else, ships meant to be dropped into the worst possible situation, alone, and trusted to make it come out right. The engineers who designed them had a saying, one that was stitched into a small plaque bolted to the wall just outside the bridge, a plaque Mara passed every single day. One good decision, made calmly, is worth more than 1,000 soldiers in a panic. Mara had been 19 when she first read that plaque, standing in a training hall on Earth with 200 other cadets, all of them hoping to someday earn a place on a ship like this one. Most of them never had. The training took years. The washout rate was brutal, not because the physical tests were impossible, but because the mental ones were. They were not looking for the bravest cadets, or the smartest, or even the best pilots. They were looking for people who could stay calm and clear-headed when everything around them was falling apart, people who would not panic and make a bad situation worse. Mara remembered her final evaluation clearly, even now, all these years later. It had not been a combat simulation. It had been a quiet room with one instructor, an old woman named Colonel Adiaze Brenner, who had served on one of the earlier ships of this class before it was decommissioned. "Tell me why we don't send fleets anymore," Colonel Brenner had said. Mara, 19 years old and terrified, had given the answer from the textbook. Because large fleets require large amounts of coordination, and coordination fails under stress. A smaller, highly trained crew can react faster and with less confusion. "That's the textbook answer," Brenner had said, not unkindly. "Give me the real one." Mara had thought about it for a long moment. "Because we almost destroyed ourselves once," she finally said, "with too many people making decisions out of fear, all at the same time, none of them able to see the whole picture. We don't want that to happen again, ever. So instead of 1,000 people making 1,000 small, scared decisions, we put one calm person in a position to make one big, clear one." Colonel Brenner had nodded slowly. "And what happens," she said, "when that one calm person is standing between an enemy fleet and a colony full of children, and every part of her wants to be scared too? Then she remembers that the fear doesn't help anyone," Mara had said. "It never has. It never will. So she sets it aside and does the job." That was the day Mara Voss earned her place aboard the Last Word, though she would not take command of it for another 6 years after that, working her way up through every station on the ship first: navigation, weapons, engineering, medical, because that was how it was done. Nobody was allowed to command a ship like this one without first understanding, deeply and personally, every single job that kept it running. A captain, who did not know how the engines worked, could not be trusted to know what the ship was truly capable of. She had taken command 11 years ago, after Captain Halvard Reyes, her mentor and the man who had first believed she was ready, retired to teach at the academy on Earth. He had given her one piece of advice on her final day under his command, standing right here in this same archive room, looking out at the same stars. "They're going to be afraid of you," he had said. "Not you personally. The ship, the name, what it's done. And that fear is going to do a lot of your job for you, long before you ever fire a weapon. Use it. Don't waste it. But never, ever, let it make you cruel. The day this ship starts using fear to hurt people, instead of to stop wars, is the day it stops being what it was built to be." Mara had carried those words with her, through 11 years of missions, through the fight at Calder's Rest that Voss Aim the traitor had witnessed without knowing it, through a dozen other engagements that never made it into coalition history books because they had ended quietly, with warnings given, and heeded, with no shots fired at all. Most of what the Last Word did, in fact, was never fighting. It was arriving somewhere dangerous, making its presence known, and giving the people causing trouble one clear chance to stop before things got worse. Most of the time, that was enough. The ship's reputation did the heavy work. The actual battles, the ones people told stories about later, those were rare. But when they happened fast, and they happened decisively. Because the Last Word never went into a fight, it was not certain it could win cleanly, without unnecessary loss on either side, if it could possibly be helped. That was the part of the ship's story that outsiders like the Scarn never seemed to understand. They saw it as pure destruction, a monster ship with no name they dared speak. What they did not see was the years of restraint behind every fight, the countless times the Last Word had shown up somewhere and simply talked its way through a crisis instead of firing a single shot. Because Mara and every captain before her had believed, all the way down, that the whole point of the ship's terrifying reputation was to prevent violence, not cause it. The door to the archive room slid open quietly, and Aiko Tanaka stepped in, holding 2 cups of something hot. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, offering her one of the cups. Thinking too much, Mara admitted, taking it. Iko sat down across from her. He was young enough that he had grown up hearing stories about the last word, the way children on Earth heard old legends, half true, half exaggerated, filled with a kind of awe that made the ship feel almost mythical. It had taken him a full year of actually serving aboard it to understand that it was, underneath all the legend, just a ship with a very good crew and a very clear purpose. "Can I ask you something, Captain?" he said. "Go ahead." "Do you ever worry the Skarn won't listen this time, that they'll just keep coming, no matter what we say?" Mara was quiet for a moment, turning the warm cup slowly in her hands. "Every single time," she said honestly. "Every mission. Some part of me wonders if this is the one where the warning doesn't work, where they call our bluff and we find out the hard way what our limits actually are." "That's not very comforting," Iko said. "It's not meant to be comforting," Mara said. "It's meant to be honest. But I'll tell you what does comfort me. This ship has never once needed a fleet behind it to do what it does. Not because it's invincible. Nothing is invincible. But because everyone on it, every single time, does their job exactly right. And because we never, ever go in assuming the fight is already won. The day we start assuming that is the day we get sloppy. And sloppy is how good people get hurt." She looked at him steadily. "So no, I don't know for certain the Skarn will listen this time. But I know we'll be ready either way. That's the whole point of everything we trained for." Iko nodded slowly, some of the tension easing out of his shoulders. "Besides," Mara added, a small, tired smile returning to her face, "the Skarn have met ships like this one before, a long time ago, before either of us served. Different captain, same class of ship, different names stitched into the hull. That's part of why they're so afraid now. It's not just what we've done. It's what ships like us have always done, going back further than anyone currently serving on either side remembers clearly. Fear like that doesn't come from one battle. It comes from a pattern, repeated so many times that people stop believing it can ever go differently." "And if this is the time it does go differently?" Iko asked quietly. Mara stood, setting her empty cup down, and looked out through the small viewport at the endless stars ahead of them. 6 days still between the ship and the enemy fleet, gathering at the edge of Ashen Prime. "Then we'll handle it," she said simply. "That's the job. Get some rest, Lieutenant. 6 days left, and I need you sharp when we get there." She left him sitting in the archive room, and walked slowly back toward the bridge, past the old plaque bolted beside the door. "One good decision, made calmly, is worth more than 1,000 soldiers in a panic." The words as true to her now as they had been the day a frightened 19-year-old cadet first read them, and decided she wanted, more than anything, to be the kind of person who could live up to them. Behind her, Arbiter's soft blue light pulsed quietly in the dark, watching the star charts update, tracking the slow, patient approach toward a battle that 300 Skarn warships believed, with total confidence, they were going to win. On the 9th day, the last word dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Ashen system, and the whole crew saw the enemy fleet at once, spread out across the main view screen like a slow-moving storm. 311 Skarn warships, arranged in a wide attack formation, drifting steadily toward Ashen Prime, a green-blue world with 14 cities and 40 million people who had spent the last week watching the sky and praying that help would arrive in time. "That's a lot of ships," Iko said quietly, staring at the display. "It's exactly the number we were told," Mara said, standing at the center of the bridge, her eyes moving calmly across the tactical readout. "Ensign Okoro, distance to Ashen Prime?" 42 minutes at their current speed, Captain," said Priya Okoro, the ship's weapons and defense officer, a sharp-eyed woman who had served with Mara for 6 years. "They'll be in orbital bombardment range in under an hour." "Then we don't have time to wait," Mara said. "Arbiter, open a channel to the Skarn Fleet command ship. Translate to their tongue. Formal address." "Channel open, Captain," Arbiter said a moment later. Mara straightened slightly in her chair, her voice steady and even, the voice of someone who had done this many times before, and knew exactly what needed to be said. "This is Captain Mara Voss, of the Earth vessel Last Word, speaking to the commander of the Skarn Dominion Advance Fleet. You are currently on a course toward Ashen Prime, a protected coalition world. I am ordering you to reverse course and withdraw from this system immediately." There was a pause of nearly a minute before a response came through. When it did, the voice on the other end was low and rough, dripping with contempt. "One ship," the Skarn commander said, his translated voice carrying a sneer even through the machine translation. "The Coalition sends one ship to stop 300. I did not expect the humans to be fools as well as cowards. I am not asking you to leave because I am afraid of your fleet," Mara said calmly. "I am asking because I do not want to destroy it, and I would prefer this system remain as peaceful as it was an hour ago. You have 4 minutes to begin your withdrawal." A harsh sound came through the channel. Laughter, or something like it. 4 minutes. "Do you know who I am, small human? I am Fleet Commander Draxu Vel. I have taken 12 systems in this war. I have burned colonies that had more defenses than your single ship. You threaten me with 4 minutes? I am not threatening you, Commander," Mara said. "I am giving you a chance. I would rather you take it." "Then you may enjoy watching Ashen Prime burn," Draxu Vel said, "before your one little ship burns with it." The channel cut off. On the bridge, nobody moved for a moment. Then Mara let out a slow breath, the kind she always allowed herself right before things got difficult, and turned to her crew. "Well," she said, "we tried." 4 minutes, Captain?" Priya Okoro asked, her hands already moving over her console, bringing weapon systems online. 4 minutes, Mara confirmed. "Arbiter, keep the channel open. I want him to see exactly what happens next, in real time, so there's no confusion afterward about what he chose." "Understood, Captain," Arbiter said. The next 4 minutes passed in near silence on the bridge, broken only by quiet, calm reports from the crew as they prepared. Mara watched the enemy fleet's steady approach on the display, 311 ships still moving in formation, showing no sign of slowing. "Time," Arbiter said softly. Mara nodded once. "Priya, target their command ship first. Precision strike only. Minimize collateral damage to escort vessels where possible. Eiko, get us moving. Evasive pattern 7. Keep us mobile. Arbiter, full tactical control assist, but final authority stays with the crew. Same as always." "Acknowledged," came 3 calm voices at once, and the last word came alive. What happened over the following 11 minutes would later be studied by Coalition military analysts for years, replayed frame by frame, from long-range sensor recordings, taken by a Doran scout ship that had been quietly monitoring the system from a safe distance. What they saw, again and again, was something that did not look like a battle in any traditional sense. It looked more like a single, continuous, impossibly precise sequence of decisions. The last word did not charge into the center of the Skarn formation, the way a smaller, aggressive ship might have. Instead, it moved along the outer edge of the fleet at tremendous speed, weaving between formations in patterns that seemed almost lazy, almost unhurried, and yet somehow never presented a clean target for the Skarn gunners struggling to track it. Its weapons fired in short, exact bursts, each one aimed with a precision that felt less like combat and more like careful surgery, disabling engines, destroying weapon arrays, striking command sections, but again and again, sparing life support systems and escape pod bays wherever the enemy formation allowed for it. "Their command ship's shields are down to 40%, Priya reported, her voice tight with concentration but steady. "Rerouting fire." "Belay that," Mara said suddenly, watching a new reading appear on her display. "Their command ship just launched escape pods. Hold fire on that vessel. Redirect to the 2 cruisers moving to flank us from the south." "Copy. Redirecting." This was the part of the last word's fighting style that no enemy fleet ever seemed prepared for, no matter how many stories they had heard beforehand. It did not fight like something trying to win at any cost. It fought like something trying to end the fight as quickly and cleanly as possible, and it adjusted, moment to moment, based on what the enemy actually did, rather than simply executing a fixed plan. A ship that turned to flee was left alone. A ship that launched escape pods was spared, its crew allowed to get clear before its hull was finally disabled. A ship that kept firing was met with exactly enough force to stop it, and not one shot more. Fleet Commander Draxu Vel, watching from his command ship as it drifted, powerless, its engines destroyed, but its crew compartments untouched, finally understood, too late, what every Skarn commander before him who had faced this ship's kind had eventually understood. The stories were not exaggerations. If anything, they had understated the truth. "Cease fire," he finally rasped into the open channel, his voice no longer full of contempt. "Cease fire. All ships, cease fire and withdraw." On the bridge of the last word, Priya's hands paused over her console. "Captain?" "Confirm the order is being followed across the fleet," Mara said calmly. "If they're standing down, we stand down too. Arbiter, monitor for any ships that don't comply." For nearly a minute, tension held the bridge as scattered Skarn ships continued firing in the chaos of the retreat, some out of confusion, some out of stubborn defiance. But one by one, as their commanders' orders spread, and as they saw the wreckage of over 40 of their own warships drifting silently around them, disabled, not destroyed, their crews alive and drifting in escape pods or crippled hulls, the firing slowed, and then stopped entirely. Mara let out a long breath and allowed her shoulders to relax, just slightly, for the first time since the battle began. "Report," she said quietly. 43 enemy vessels disabled. 0 destroyed outright, Priya reported, checking her readouts twice, as if she could hardly believe it herself. Estimated Skarn casualties, minimal. Most crews evacuated successfully before their ships lost power. Remaining 268 vessels have reversed course, and are withdrawing from the system. "Our status?" Mara asked. "No damage, Captain," Eco said, some disbelief still coloring his voice, even though he had watched every second of it happen. "Not a scratch." Mara nodded slowly, watching on the main view screen as the great red mass of the Skarn fleet began to shrink, pulling back and away from Ashen Prime, leaving behind only the drifting, powerless wrecks of the ships that had refused to retreat in time. "Open a channel to Ashen Prime's surface command," she said. "Let them know the fleet has withdrawn, and that it's safe to stand down their planetary defenses. And someone get me a channel to Commander Draxu Vel's escape pod. I want to speak with him before Coalition rescue ships arrive to take him into custody." A few minutes later, the channel opened, and the shaken voice of Fleet Commander Draxu Vel came through. No longer rough with contempt, but quiet, almost hollow. "You could have destroyed my entire fleet," he said. "Why didn't you?" Mara considered the question for a moment before answering. "Because destroying your fleet was never the goal, Commander. Protecting Ashen Prime was the goal. Your fleet stopped being a threat to that world the moment it withdrew. Everything after that was just cleanup." There was a long silence on the other end of the channel. "The stories about your ship," Draxu Vel finally said. "We were told it destroys everything it fights, that nothing survives an encounter with it." "Then the stories were wrong," Mara said simply. "Or maybe they only told you the parts that made a better warning. Either way, you're alive, Commander, and so is most of your crew, and so are 40 million people on the planet behind me. I'd call that a good outcome for everyone, considering how this could have gone." She closed the channel and looked around at her crew. Eco still watching the retreating fleet with wide eyes. Priya slowly powering down weapon systems. Arbiter's blue light pulsing steady and calm, as always, in the corner of the bridge. "Well done, everyone," Mara said quietly. "That's the job." But even as she said it, she was already looking at a new report scrolling across her display, one that had just come in from the Coalition command network, and her calm expression tightened, just slightly, into something more careful. "Captain," Arbiter said, having noticed the same report at the exact same moment, "the Skarn Dominion's Central Command has issued a new fleet order, effective immediately." "Let me guess," Mara said quietly, watching the numbers on the report climb higher than anything she had expected. "They're sending more." "Considerably more," Arbiter confirmed. "Emperor Kraxos Than of the Skarn Dominion has personally ordered the mobilization of the 2nd and 3rd Home Fleets, along with every reserve vessel currently in Dominion space. Estimated combined force, over 900 warships, en route to this sector within the next 11 days. The bridge went quiet again, but this time the silence carried a different weight. 900, Iko said softly. Mara looked at the star chart, at the small dot of her own ship, and at the new, much larger red mass beginning to gather on the far edge of Dominion space, and she felt, for the first time since the mission began, the true size of what still lay ahead of them. "Then we'd better be ready," she said quietly, "because it looks like the real fight hasn't even started yet. News of the battle at Ashen Prime spread through Coalition space faster than any ship could travel, carried by comm relays, and passed from world to world within hours. By the time the last word had finished helping coordinate rescue efforts for the stranded Skarn crews, an act that surprised the Coalition almost as much as the battle itself had, the story was already being told everywhere, in a dozen different versions, most of them wrong in one detail or another, but all of them agreeing on the core of it. One human ship had faced 300 Skarn warships and had won without needing to destroy them. Back in the Great Hall of the Coalition, Speaker Ulvin watched the sensor recordings for the fourth time, still trying to fully understand what she was seeing. They disabled 43 ships, she said, mostly to herself, and destroyed none. Their own vessel took no damage at all. It should not be possible, said Kesu, the Doran delegate, standing beside her and staring at the same frozen frame of the battle. The last word, cutting between two Skarn cruisers with a precision that looked almost gentle. One ship. 900 coming now, and they still say they do not want a support fleet. I spoke with Captain Voss directly, an hour ago, Ulvin said. She said the same thing she has always said. No Coalition ships in the engagement zone, but this time she asked for something else. What? She asked us to evacuate every civilian world within 3 systems of the coming battle, and to have medical and rescue ships standing by at a safe distance, ready to move in once the fighting is over. Ulvin turned away from the screen. She is not preparing to destroy 900 ships, Kesu. She is preparing to take care of the survivors. Kesu said nothing for a long moment. That is either the most confident thing I have ever heard, he finally said, echoing his own words from days earlier without seeming to notice, or the most terrifying. Far away, in the heart of Skarn Dominion space, a very different meeting was taking place. Emperor Kraxos Than sat at the head of a long obsidian table, surrounded by his most senior military commanders, all of them silent, all of them careful not to be the first to speak. The Emperor was not a large being, but the weight of his presence filled the room completely. His skin was the deep red-black of old iron, and his eyes, when they moved across the table, made even his most decorated generals sit a little straighter. 43 ships, he said quietly, his voice carrying easily through the silent room. Disabled by one vessel, with no casualties on their side. Explain to me how this happened. General Voth Karnas, commander of what remained of the advance fleet, stood slowly. He had not been present at the battle himself, having remained at the rear with the reserve forces, but he had reviewed every recording twice. Emperor, the human ship's weapons and defensive systems appear to be significantly beyond anything we have previously encountered from their species. Its maneuverability alone. I did not ask for a technical report, Kraxos Than interrupted, his voice still soft, which was somehow worse than if he had shouted. I asked how one ship humiliated an entire advance fleet of the Skarn Dominion. Draxuvel surrendered. He did not lose. He surrendered, with over 260 ships still under his command, to a single enemy vessel. The room was silent. There are stories, said a smaller voice from further down the table. It belonged to Senar Vosk, an intelligence officer whose job was normally to sit quietly and listen. Stories from the border regions, Emperor. Raiding captains who encountered ships like this one before, years ago. They speak of it in fearful terms. Some will not even say its name. Superstition, Kraxos Than said flatly. Perhaps, Senar Vosk said carefully. But Emperor, I have reviewed every recorded encounter our people have had with this class of human vessel, going back 9 years. In every single case, the outcome was the same. Overwhelming, precise, controlled victory, with almost no loss of life on either side, because the human ship consistently chooses to disable rather than destroy, whenever such a choice is possible. Why does that matter? Barked another general, a hard-eyed being named Threxa Maul. A win is a win. If they wish to be merciful, that is their weakness, not their strength. With respect, General, Senar Vosk said, I do not believe it is weakness. I believe it is discipline, and discipline of that level, sustained across every single encounter for nearly a decade, without exception, is far more frightening than simple destruction would be. A weapon that destroys everything in its path is at least predictable. A weapon that could destroy everything, but chooses precisely how much force to use every single time, based on the situation in front of it, that is something else entirely. That takes a kind of control we have not yet matched. Emperor Kraxos Than was quiet for a long moment, his red-black eyes fixed on some point far beyond the table in front of him. "You are saying this ship is not simply powerful," he finally said. "You are saying it is patient." "Yes, Emperor." "And patient enemies," Kraxos Than said slowly, "are the ones who win long wars, not just single battles." He looked around the table at his commanders. 900 ships are already moving. I will not recall them, but I want every commander in that fleet to understand something clearly before they engage. His voice hardened. This is not a raiding party facing an unlucky border skirmish. This is the full might of the Skarn Dominion, prepared and coordinated, against one vessel, regardless of how remarkable that vessel might be. Numbers eventually overwhelm precision. No crew, however skilled, however patient, can account for every angle when facing 900 separate threats at once. We will not make Draxuvel's mistake of engaging carelessly. We will surround it. We will exhaust its resources, and eventually, even the most disciplined weapon runs out of options. "And if it does not run out of options, Emperor?" Senar Vosk asked quietly. Kraxos Than's eyes narrowed. "Then perhaps," he said, "we will finally understand why the humans were confident enough to send only one ship in the first place. But I do not intend to find out through fear. I intend to find out through strength. Fleet Commander Threxa Maul will take personal command of the combined force. You have 11 days to prepare a formation that does not allow this vessel the room to maneuver the way it did against Draxuvel. No open space, no easy angles. Surround it completely, and force it to fight on our terms, not its own." Threxa Maul bowed his head. "It will be done, Emperor." Meanwhile, aboard the Last Word, drifting quietly at the edge of the Ashen system while rescue operations continued below, Mara Voss sat in her private quarters, reviewing the same intelligence reports that had reached the Coalition, watching the numbers of the incoming Skarn fleet grow with each update. Arbiter's voice came through softly. "Captain, I have completed an analysis of the projected enemy formation, based on historical Skarn tactical doctrine, and the reports we have gathered on Fleet Commander Threxa Maul's previous engagements." "Go ahead," Mara said, not looking up from her display. "He favors encirclement tactics," Arbiter said. "Wide dispersal formations, designed to eliminate maneuvering room for a single target, forcing engagement from multiple directions simultaneously. Against a lesser vessel, this strategy would likely be effective. And against us? Uncertain," Arbiter admitted. "This will be the largest single engagement in this ship's operational history, and the largest force ever assembled against a vessel of this class, in recorded conflict. I project a high probability of success, based on our weapon systems, defensive capabilities, and your tactical record, Captain. However, I must note that the margin for error will be considerably smaller than in previous engagements." Mara finally looked up from the display, rubbing her eyes tiredly. "How much smaller?" "Sufficiently smaller that I recommend requesting Coalition support for this engagement, Captain, despite our standard operating procedure." Mara was quiet for a long moment, considering that. It was not a suggestion Arbiter made lightly. In 11 years of serving together, the ship's intelligence had made this recommendation perhaps twice before, both times in situations that had, in hindsight, absolutely justified the caution. "If we bring Coalition ships into this fight," Mara said slowly, "we lose the one advantage that's kept our own crew safe through every engagement so far. A mixed fleet moves slower, communicates less cleanly, hesitates in moments where we can't afford to hesitate. We'd be trading a smaller risk to us for a much bigger risk to everyone involved." "That is possible," Arbiter agreed. "It is also possible that 900 ships, deployed with sufficient coordination, simply represent more threats than 4 crew members, and one vessel can manage alone, regardless of skill or discipline." Mara stood and walked to the small viewport in her quarters, looking out at the stars, quiet and endless, utterly indifferent to the storm gathering 11 days away. "Then we'll need a different plan," she said finally. "Not more ships. A smarter fight. Pull up everything we have on the Ashen system's geography. Asteroid fields, gravity wells, anything that limits how cleanly they can surround us. If Threxa Maul wants to take away our room to maneuver, we're going to need to find some room he doesn't know about." "Understood, Captain," Arbiter said. "I will begin the analysis immediately." "And Arbiter," Mara added quietly, Keep working the numbers on coalition support, just in case. I'm not ruling it out completely. I just want it to be the last option, not the first one." "Understood," Arbiter said again, and the soft blue light in the corner of her quarters pulsed steadily as it began its work, calculating and recalculating a battle that was still 11 days away, but which both the human ship and the massive Skarn fleet bearing down on it now understood, without any doubt, would decide far more than just the fate of one border world. 11 days later, the Skarn Dominion's combined fleet arrived at the edge of the Ashen system, and it was, by any measure, the largest force that had ever gathered in that part of the galaxy. 906 warships spread out in a formation that took up an area of space larger than most solar systems, arranged exactly as Fleet Commander Threxamal had planned. A wide, layered sphere, designed so that no matter which direction a single enemy vessel tried to flee, it would find more warships waiting. Aboard his command ship at the center of the formation, Threxamal watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. "There is no gap in this formation," he said to his staff. "No angle it can use. When it arrives, it will have nowhere to go but toward us." What he did not know, what none of the Skarn fleet knew, was that the last word had already arrived, 3 days earlier, and had spent that time doing something no one had expected: hiding. Not fleeing. Not retreating. Hiding, carefully and deliberately, inside a dense asteroid field on the far edge of the system, one that Skarn scout ships had scanned and dismissed as too small and too debris-choked to conceal a vessel of any significant size. Arbiter had spent those 3 days running quiet calculations, mapping every gravitational eddy and mineral deposit in the field that might mask the ship's signature, while Mara and her crew rested, prepared, and waited. "They're in position," Eco reported quietly from his station, watching the enemy formation settle into its final arrangement on the display. "Full encirclement pattern, just like Arbiter predicted. They're expecting us to arrive from the direction of Ashen Prime," Mara said, studying the formation carefully. "That's the gap they've left thinnest, because they think we'll come from the world we're defending, moving to intercept before they reach it." "Are we not doing that?" Priya asked. "No," Mara said. "We're already here. We've been here for 3 days, and they don't know it. Which means the fight they've prepared for isn't the fight they're actually going to get." She looked around at her small crew. "Arbiter, transmit the warning message, same as always. Give them the chance." "Transmitting now, Captain." The message reached Threxamal's command ship as a simple, calm transmission, with no visual, only Mara's steady voice. "This is Captain Mara Voss, of the Earth vessel Last Word. You are gathered in force, near a protected coalition world. I am asking you, one final time, to withdraw peacefully. You have 4 minutes." On his bridge, Threxamal's staff scrambled to locate the source of the transmission, but found nothing. No ship, no signature, nothing on any scanner across the entire 900-ship formation. "Where is it broadcasting from?" Threxamal demanded. "Unknown, Commander. The signal shows no point of origin within sensor range." Threxamal's expression darkened. He understood, in that moment, something that Draxuvel had not understood before his own battle. That this was not going to be a fight where he could see his enemy coming. "Ignore the transmission," he said. "Maintain formation. Full alert status. All vessels. It is here somewhere. Find it before it finds us." But 4 minutes passed, and nothing changed. The great sphere of Skarn warships held its position, scanners sweeping in every direction, finding nothing. Then, without warning, 3 ships on the formation's outer edge lost power simultaneously, their weapons and engines going dark in the space of a few seconds, before anyone had even detected an incoming attack. "Report!" Threxamal shouted. "What happened to those ships?" "Unknown, Commander. We detected no." 5 more ships went dark, this time closer to the center of the formation. And now, finally, sensors began picking up brief flickers of movement. Impossibly fast, impossibly precise. A single vessel weaving through the gaps between Skarn ships that Threxamal had been certain left no room for anything to pass through. What the Skarn fleet had not accounted for, and what Arbiter had calculated carefully over 3 quiet days in the asteroid field, was that a formation designed to eliminate maneuvering room for an enemy attacking from outside also, by its very nature, created narrow, Complicated pathways of open space between its own ships, pathways too small and too risky for a Skarn vessel to use without colliding with its own allies, but not too small for a single ship flown with absolute precision, and guided by an intelligence that had spent 3 days memorizing every meter of the formation before it was even finished forming. The last word moved through the heart of the Skarn fleet like a needle through cloth, disabling ship after ship with short, exact strikes, never staying in one place long enough for more than a handful of vessels to target it at once, using the enemy's own overwhelming numbers as cover, because in a formation that dense, any Skarn ship firing at the human vessel risked hitting one of its own instead. "They can't get a clean shot," Eco said, watching the chaos unfold on the display, a note of disbelief in his voice, even though this was exactly the plan they had spent 11 days preparing. "They're too close together." "That was the idea," Mara said calmly, her hands steady on the controls, guiding the ship through gaps that existed for only fractions of a second at a time. "Priya, status on the command ship?" "We're closing on it now, Captain. Their shields are already reduced from the debris field 2 systems back. That trick with the asteroid belt worked better than we hoped." Threxa Maul, watching his formation collapse into confusion around him, finally understood what Senar Vosk had tried to warn the Emperor about, back in that quiet room on the Skarn homeworld. This was not a battle he could win through numbers alone, because numbers, deployed without room to use them properly, simply became targets, standing too close together. "Break formation," he finally shouted, his earlier confidence gone entirely. "Spread out. Give yourselves room to maneuver. Don't just stand there and—" But by then, it was already too late to matter. The last word had reached the heart of the formation, and Threxa Maul's own command ship was directly in its path. "Their shields are down," Priya reported. "We have a clean shot on their command systems." Mara looked at the tactical display for a long moment, at the drifting, disabled ships scattered throughout the formation, at the command ship now defenseless in front of her, and made the same choice she had made 100 times before. The choice that had built the ship's reputation in the first place, though not in the way the Skarn had ever understood it. "Disable only," she said. "Target their engines and weapon systems. Leave life support and escape pod bays untouched." "Copy. Disabling only." The final strike took less than 10 seconds. Threxa Maul's command ship went dark, drifting silently at the center of a formation that had, in less than 20 minutes, gone from the largest fleet ever assembled against a single vessel to a scattered field of disabled ships, their crews alive, their weapons useless, their commander sitting in the dark on a bridge that no longer answered his orders. Mara opened a channel. "Commander Threxa Maul," she said calmly, "your fleet is disabled. Your people are alive. I would like to keep it that way. Please confirm you understand, and give the order to stand down." There was a long silence before Threxa Maul's voice came through, quiet and stunned. "You could have destroyed us all," he said. "Every ship in this formation. We gave you every advantage, every gap you could have used against us, and you chose to disable rather than destroy. Even now, even facing the largest force the Dominion has ever gathered." "That's what I've been trying to tell every commander I've spoken to since this war began," Mara said. "We don't want to destroy your people, Commander. We never did. We want this war to stop, before it costs any more lives on either side than it already has. Every time your fleet keeps fighting, that becomes harder to achieve. Every time it stops, it becomes easier. That choice has always been yours to make, not mine." The silence that followed was different this time, not confusion, but something closer to understanding. "I will relay your message to the Emperor myself," Threxa Maul finally said. "I do not know if he will listen, but I will tell him what I saw here today, exactly as it happened, and I do not think I can make it sound anything other than what it was." Weeks later, in the Great Hall of the Coalition, Speaker Ulvin stood before the assembled delegates once more, but the mood in the room was entirely different from the fearful, uncertain gathering that had taken place before the battle at Ashen Prime. "The Skarn Dominion has formally requested peace talks," she announced, and the chamber, for once, did not erupt into noise, but instead fell into a kind of stunned, grateful quiet. "Emperor Kraxos Than has recalled all remaining fleets from Coalition space." Fleet Commander Threxa Maul's report, it seems, was persuasive. Kesu, the Doran delegate, stood slowly, shaking his head with something that looked almost like a smile. "One ship," he said quietly. 900 warships, and one ship ended it without destroying a single one of them. I have spoken with Captain Voss, Ulvin said. She was very clear about something, and I think it is worth sharing with all of you, exactly as she said it to me. She said that humanity does not send fleets to war because fleets are built to win battles, but this ship was built to end them. She said the difference matters more than people usually realize, and that the day a ship like hers starts caring more about winning than about ending things peacefully is the day it stops doing the job it was built for. Voss Aim, the old trader who had first told the coalition the story of Calder's Rest so many weeks ago, sat quietly near the back of the hall, listening. He thought of the wreckage he had seen that day, and the untouched colony beside it, and the way the Skarn who survived that encounter had refused, ever since, to speak the ship's name out loud. He understood now, finally, why they never spoke it. It was not because the name itself was frightening. It was because the name carried a promise inside it, one that had been kept, without exception, for as long as anyone could remember. A promise that no matter how large the enemy, no matter how impossible the odds looked on paper, this was a fight that would end, cleanly and completely, the moment the other side chose to let it. Far away, drifting quietly in the calm space beyond the Ashen system, the last word continued its slow patrol along the border, its crew resting after weeks of tension, its hull as plain and unmarked as it had always been, carrying no flags, no decorations, nothing to announce what it had done, or what it was capable of doing again, if it ever needed to. On the bridge, Mara Voss looked out at the quiet stars and allowed herself, finally, a real smile. 9 days to the next border check, Eco said, checking the navigation charts. After everything that just happened, it feels strange, doesn't it? Just a quiet patrol. That's the whole point, Lieutenant, Mara said softly. Quiet is what we're working toward. Every single time. It just usually takes a very loud fight to get there. Behind her, Arbiter's soft blue light pulsed steadily in the corner of the bridge, patient as always, already calculating the safest route forward, ready for whatever came next, while the ship carried its small crew and its heavy, unspoken name deeper into the calm, waiting dark.